Frank William Abaniel Jr. was one of the most notorious impostors of all time, claiming to have assumed no fewer than 8 identities, including an airline pilot, a physician, a U.S. Bureau of Prisons agent, and a lawyer. Abaniel escaped from police custody twice, once from a taxiing airliner and once from a U.S. federal penitentiary, before turning 22 years old. Abaniel's story inspired the Academy Award-nominated feature film, Catch Me If You Can, that came out in 2002, starring Leonardo DiCaprio as Abaniel and Tom Hanks as the FBI agent pursuing him. His first victim was his father, who gave Abaniel a gasoline credit card and a truck to assist him in commuting to his part-time job. To get date money, Abaniel devised a scheme in which he used the gasoline card to buy tires, batteries, and other car-related items at gas stations and then asked the attendants to give him cash in return for the products. Ultimately, his father was liable for a bill amounting to $3,400, equivalent to $27,825 in 2018. Abaniel was only 15 at the time. Abaniel's early confidence tricks included writing personal checks on his own overdrawn account. This, however, would only work for a limited time before the bank demanded payment, so he moved on to opening other accounts at different banks, eventually creating new identities to sustain this charade. Over time and through experimentation, he developed different ways of defrauding banks, such as printing out his own copies of checks, such as payroll checks, depositing them, and encouraging banks to advance him cash on the basis of his account balances. Another trick he used was to magnetically print his account number on blank deposit slips and add them to the stack of real blank slips in the bank. This resulted in the deposits written on those slips by bank customers entering his account rather than the accounts of the legitimate customers. Here's a list of some of the impersonations he took on himself throughout his life. A pilot. Abaniel decided to impersonate a pilot to look more legitimate when cashing checks. He obtained a uniform by calling Pan American World Airways, Pan AM, telling the company that he was a pilot working for them who had lost his uniform while getting it cleaned at his hotel, and obtaining a new one with a fake employee ID number. He then forged a Federal Aviation Administration pilot's license. Pan Am estimated that between the ages of 16 to 18, Abaniel flew, as a passenger, more than 1 million miles on more than 250 flights and flew to 26 countries by deadheading. As a teenager, he noticed that his hair was graying, which he parlayed into his pilot persona by giving the appearance of being older and having more professional credentials than he did. As a company pilot, he was also able to stay at hotels free during this time. Expenses such as food or lodging were billed to the airline company. Notably, however, Abaniel did not fly on Pan Am planes, believing his charade could potentially be identified by real Pan Am pilots or employees who would be asked for genuine identification or proof of employment. Abaniel stated that he was often invited by pilots to take the controls of the plane in flight. On one occasion, he was offered the courtesy of flying at 30,000 feet. He took the controls and enabled the autopilot, very much aware that I had been handed custody of 140 lives, my own included, because I couldn't fly a kite. A teaching assistant. As one of his other impersonation, Abaniel said that he worked as a sociology teaching assistant at Brigham Young University for a semester, under the name Frank Adams. Brigham Young University, however, disputes this claim. Physician. For 11 months, Abaniel impersonated a chief resident pediatrician in a Georgia hospital under the alias Frank Williams. He chose this course after he was nearly arrested disembarking from a flight in New Orleans. Afraid of possible capture, he retired temporarily to Georgia. When filling out a rental application, he impulsively listed his occupation as doctor, fearing that the owner might check with Pan Am if he wrote pilot. After befriending a real doctor who lived in the same apartment complex, he agreed to act as a supervisor of resident interns as a favor until the local hospital could find someone else to take the job. The position was not solely administrative as he has since claimed, but was not demanding for Abaniel as 7 interns were eager to get experience under his supervision. He was able to fake his way through most of his duties by letting the interns show off their handling of the cases coming in during his late-night shift. However, he was nearly exposed when an infant became critically unwell from oxygen deprivation, and he didn't initially understand the meaning or gravity of the situation when a nurse informed him of a blue baby. He left the hospital only after he realized he could put lives at risk by his inability to respond to life-and-death situations. Attorney while posing as Pan Am First Officer Robert Black, Abaniel forged a Harvard University law transcript, passed the Louisiana bar exam, and got a job at the Louisiana State Attorney General's office at the age of 19. He told a flight attendant he had briefly dated that he was also a Harvard Law School student, and she introduced him to a lawyer friend. Abaniel was told the bar needed more lawyers and was offered a chance to apply. After making a fake transcript from Harvard, he prepared himself for the compulsory exam. Despite failing twice, he claims to have passed the bar exam legitimately on the 3rd try after 8 weeks of study, because Louisiana, at the time, allowed you to take the bar over and over as many times as you needed. It was really a matter of eliminating what you got wrong. In his biography, he described the premise of his legal job as a gopher boy who simply fetched coffee and books for his boss. However, a real Harvard graduate also worked for that attorney general, and he hounded Abaniel with questions about his tenure at Harvard. Frank had trouble crafting a plausible story for himself as an undergraduate of a university he never attended, and the co-workers' small talk for a chance to compare notes with a fellow alumnus soon grew into repeating questioning. The co-worker disbelieved his credentials and had contacted Harvard about Frank's academic history. Finding none, he convinced his boss to launch a background check on Frank Abaniel. However, Frank resigned before it came into progress. He spent a total of 8 months as a fake attorney. Abaniel was eventually arrested in Montpellier, France, in 1969 when an Air France attendant he previously dated recognized him and informed police. When the French police arrested him, 12 countries in which he had committed fraud sought his extradition. After a 2-day trial, he first served time in a French prison, a 1-year sentence that the presiding judge at his trial reduced to 6 months. He was then extradited to Sweden. Following another conviction, he served 6 months in a Swedish prison, only to learn at the end of it he would be tried next in Italy. Later, a Swedish judge asked a U.S. State Department official to revoke his passport. Without a valid passport, the Swedish authorities were legally compelled to deport him to the United States, where he was sentenced to 12 years in a federal prison for multiple counts of forgery. His escapes from the authorities occurred twice. While being deported to the U.S., Abaniel escaped from a British airliner as it was turning onto a taxiway at New York's John F. Kennedy International Airport. Under cover of night, he scaled a nearby fence and hailed a cab to Grand Central Terminal. After stopping in the Bronx to change clothes and pick up a set of keys to a Montreal bank safe deposit box containing $20,000, Abaniel caught a train to Montreal's airport to purchase a ticket to São Paulo, Brazil. After a close call at a Max Milk, he was apprehended by a constable of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police while standing in line at the ticket counter. Subsequently, Abaniel was handed over to the U.S. Border Patrol. In April 1971, Abaniel reportedly escaped from the Federal Detention Center in Atlanta, Georgia, while awaiting trial. Intent on making his way to Brazil, Abaniel was picked up a few weeks later by two NYPD detectives when he inadvertently walked past their unmarked police car. In 1974, after he had served less than 5 years of his 12-year sentence at Federal Correctional Institution in Petersburg, Virginia, the United States federal government released him on the condition that he help the federal authorities, without pay, to investigate crimes committed by fraud and scam artists, and sign in once a week. Unwilling to return to his family in New York, he left the choice of parole location up to the court, and it was decided that he would be paroled in Houston, Texas. After his release, Abaniel tried numerous jobs, including cook, grocer, and movie projectionist, but he was fired from most of these after it was discovered he had been hired without revealing his criminal past. Finding those he was able to land unsatisfying, he approached a bank with an offer. He explained to the bank what he had done and offered to speak to the bank's staff and show them various tricks that paperhangers use to defraud banks. His offer included the condition that if they did not find his speech helpful, they would owe him nothing; otherwise, they would owe him only $50 with an agreement that they would provide his name to other banks. With that, he began a legitimate life as a security consultant. Abaniel is currently a consultant and lecturer for the FBI Academy and field offices. He also runs Abaniel & Associates, a financial fraud consultancy company.